Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. All right, there it is. Oh my gosh, we're doing this thing, man. Here we go. I can't wait to introduce you all to my guest today. He's an absolute badass. Well, who is he, Casey? Tell us about him. Well, get this. He's a serial entrepreneur, but not just, I've started companies, but this guy has had several successful exits where your company is acquired, which means he's doing right. He's finding that product market fit. He's growing companies. He's all about scale. And he's a business mentor. He's a growth marketer, a lead gen expert, and really, I would say a marketing thought leader in the space. Again, all about scaling companies. We're going to dive into that today. Co-founder of WordSmiths, CEO and founder of Eudaimonia Health, Andrew Miller. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Going to try to live up to that intro. That was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you're doing so many things. So I can't wait to crack this thing open. I can't wait to learn about scaling. I can't wait to learn about growth marketing. So I'm going to pass you this thing. It's heavy, but I know you live in Washington now, so you work out. Here you go. Ugh. Okay,
right.
You got it?
I think I got it.
Take Thor's hammer. You got it?
All right, I got it.
All right, there he goes. All right.
Okay.
Take Thor's hammer, smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Okay. Do my best. So as you mentioned, a lot of my background's actually been in growth marketing. And one of the big myths that I've heard, and it still permeates on the internet all the time, is that every company needs a growth marketer. I don't know how many times I've heard that. It's like, no, we just need a growth marketer and then everything will be solved. But the thing I want to bring here on breaking this myth is that your pre-revenue SaaS does not need a growth marketer. In fact, if you haven't found product market fit, you really do not need a growth marketer. So one of the questions that we hear is like, what is a growth marketer? What are they supposed to do? So a growth marketer really helps find, new traction channels for your company, right? The process of growth marketing is using data gained through marketing campaigns and experimentations to really help drive that growth. So if you have no revenue, if you haven't been able to sell your product, then you really don't need a growth marketer.
Boom. Dude, you are cracking open something, a misconception where we're just throwing around the word growth, right? Because Who doesn't want to grow?
Yeah.
But there's a particular meaning here. And if you get the wrong, if you're not using the right definition here, you end up with the wrong person on the team at the wrong point in time. Why do we fall into this? Why do we not know about what's going on and make these mistakes?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest issues here is that the term growth marketing isn't clearly defined. And it comes originally from the term growth hacking, which, Sean Ellis coined and brought out there. And, growth hacking, you love that name at the beginning, but it's like, oh, you're just hacking things together. You're really scrappy. It's for starts. You're trying to put things, and figure out how to grow revenue as quick as possible. But I think that really, takes away from the principles of growth marketing and what it should do. So growth hacking, even though it was great, it got the name out there on this is a new type of marketer. This is a marketer. And Sean Ellis did a great job in saying, you need to have your North Star metric. You need to map everything out. You need to have that goal at the end of the day that you're working towards. And you should also have the ability to work throughout every organization. Growth marketing isn't just marketing. It's just, you're not just jumping on the marketing side and you're caught in your one little corner there. You have to have the ability to look on the product side, to look on the, work with sales, work on the CS side and figure out new avenues to actually grow revenue and test and iterate, because a lot of your experiments are going to fail. But I think it comes back to just misconceptions on what the term is, and then just applying it. Oh yeah, it's growth mindset. It's growth marketing. You can throw that anywhere and they'll help us. And it's like, it's not actually accurate.
And when you mentioned growth hacking, hacking seems small to me, right? Like to your point, if you're just hacking something together with duct tape, that does not mean it's like a well-polished thing. You probably haven't figured it all out yet.
Right.
And it makes me think startup, fresh, pre-revenue SaaS.
Exactly.
But this growth market, completely different. Could you start at the beginning and maybe give me a timeline of, is there a title of the marketer that you want for that pre-revenue SaaS, pre-product market fit? What's
Right.
that called? Who's your like first marketer, and then when is the right time? Let's like walk through to when is the right time for the growth marketer.
Right. Right. So I think it was Winning by Design. That the founder Jaco van der Kooj, amazing. They put together so many great models out there, and it's all open source. So little plug there. I highly recommend anybody,
Shout
check
out.
out their revenue architecture course, all that stuff there. It's amazing. But what they did is they actually built out a growth model, and it's very applicable to, the SaaS space. And in there, it kind of shows you the different stages that every business goes through. So that pre-revenue, stage, there's actually 2 points there, right? There's the prototype, when you're just building out your product. It's not really ready for game day for anybody to really see it. You're probably a bunch of engineers in the back end just kind of fixing things and putting it together to try and get
Hacking.
something, yeah, hacking it together,
Yeah.
right? And you could bring on a marketer then to just build up some interest, talk about what's coming in the future. But I'd say your best marketers at that time are your founders. Your founders should go out there and
Mhm.
evangelize, the company, and
Yeah.
talk about what you're working on and what you're going to build, and that dream and that vision. Hiring a marketer to come in and try to figure out what hasn't actually been created yet will be very difficult, because you're going to have a lot of mixed signals there. After the prototype, you'll finally have an MVP. You'll have something that's ready to go out and bring in probably your network, your close friends, people that have shown interest within your network that you think, hey, this could be a good closed, beta group. And then again, you probably don't need a full-time marketer at that point. Depends on if you've raised, like a large pre-seed or a seed round, and depends on how you want to build that out. But I wouldn't recommend bringing on a growth hacker at that time. It just doesn't make sense yet. You're just trying to figure out, is there any interest at all? Once you move from the MVP phase, then you actually get into that product market fit. And on a revenue standpoint, I mean, there's no clear definition that this is product market fit and you've perfectly found it. But a good scale that they give on the growth model is basically from 0 to 1 million. Within that 0 to 1 million phase, you're really just learning how to price your product. You've gone beyond your core network of people that to people that are outside of that group that may not have ever heard of you before, but you're pitching to them, you're talking to them, and ideally they're paying you. You're figuring out, will people pay
Right.
you for this product? And so that's whenever you're figuring out product market fit. Once you've really figured out that people will pay you for this, and your customer acquisition cost is not going to be great. It's going to be very, very high, but that doesn't matter at this point. It's really just figuring out, are people willing to pay you money for the service that you brought into this world? And if it's a yes, awesome. You're trying to scrape things together. At this point, you could have a generalist market. You could have that first marketer that's mostly a generalist that maybe just focuses on one traction channel. One of the things that I've seen a lot is you could get from 0 to 1 million using one marketing channel if you're consistent
Wow.
about it, if you follow through. I mean, and you're testing and looking at the data, and this is actually working. But let's say you decide from a marketing standpoint, you're just going to focus on helping your sales team do outbound. So there's
Sure.
sales involved in there, but you just focus on that, and that can help you hit that million mark. Just be consistent about that. That's actually one of the ways that I used. I worked for a company called Interfinancial a long time ago, and with them, they had really no revenue. It was the CEO, and I'm the first marketer. Had a growth, which they didn't need a growth person at the time, and that's all we did. I just did outbound for them, and basically built out a process that as soon as they showed interest, went over to the CEO. He jumped on the call, and he was the salesperson, and he closed them. And we built out a funnel. I think it was over $6 million from 0 to 6 million pipeline just through that channel. So it works. Once you've found product market fit, then you move into a phase called go to market fit. And that's really learning to sell, the product. So you move from learning to price your product to now you're learning to sell your product. That's when you can bring on a growth marketer. That's when you can start, testing out new traction channels, bringing them on board, and helping to kind of, see these are scalable methods for us to get beyond that million, or these are not, and just have them focusing and working throughout the entire company. And then there's other phases after that, right? Scale up to fit. That's whenever you start really getting big after 10 million or so. But that's kind of the model that they put together, and I think it's beautiful. And why reinvent the wheel? It makes a lot of sense to me.
Beautiful. I mean, that puts it so much context. I don't think we talk enough about this in marketing, and so we're not very intentional. You might go from one job to the next job, and
Right.
you might inadvertently get yourself from a growth role to more of that early generalist startup role, and be confused why the methods that worked in one place didn't work in the other. Just like how we harp on people for not treating B2B like you might treat B2C. Yes, there's some crossover, but like, keep in mind, there's a different, there's more people involved. There's other things happening. So we have to keep in mind that there is this different style of marketing that's needed to help the organization out. I love this. And so in your sweet spot, the place you love to hang out is that growth area.
It really is. It really is. I've worked at all stages of companies, right? Like I mentioned earlier, pre-revenue, all the way up to, I was a CMO for an organization that when I joined, we were at 400 million in ARR, and we moved up to 500 million. But I really found
an extra 100 mil.
Right. Yeah. It was great. 100
milli.
But I really found my sweet spot coming into organizations that just found product market fit, right? So they're usually, and they're higher than the million, so they're usually about like 3 to 6 million in ARR.
Yeah.
And they're trying to scale up to that 50 or 100 million, price point. And it's within that group that you were talking about, B2C versus, B2B. There are, in our playbooks that we bring in, there are some repeatable playbooks that you can bring in to that space whenever you're at like that 3 to 6 million, getting up to 50 and 100. But not all of those things actually work in different, niches. So when I was at Process Street, some of the stuff that we did there, it's like, oh yeah, I can just repeat this and bring it over when I joined Agorapulse. And it's like, well, I can build some foundational elements here that make sense, but this is a completely different niche. Business process management versus social media management, very, very different. The buyer is different. And so you have to use those creative elements. And that's one of the things on the B2C side that a lot of people harp about, right? That's another myth that we're not going to bust. But why is B2B so boring? Why aren't you building in like all the creativity from B2C? It's like, well, you can, and you bring some of those nuances in there, but it's still a different market. I mean, human to human connection, but it is still different. So, yeah.
Why is B2B so boring? You open that Pandora box.
Oh no,
now you got to go there.
I didn't mentally prepare for this conversation going down that right. But no, I don't know. I feel like B2B has a bad rap of being legacy. We're all very business professional. You have to talk to them about just, the ROI and that's it. But at the end of the day, the decision maker and the purchasers, they're humans and they want to be entertained. They want to be engaged. And then you'll stand out from the 100,000 other pitches that the CMO or the CEO is receiving by email every day. By having something unique and interesting in there. And that's why you see, these B2C companies. I just got upsold on a B2C side. We were talking about, keto earlier, but from this company called Keto Chow. Yeah. And I got hit with a Facebook ad. I never give in to these Facebook ads, but it was a beautiful story. It was so well written and so well produced. And it had like this witch in there that was brewing up, magic potions. And it's at the end of the day, it's a shake, right? It's a shake that is, a keto shake that you can, mix in and it helps you with your diet and all that stuff. But I was just like, this is a great ad. I sent it to my wife. She watched the whole thing. It was like 5 minutes. I never sit through a 5-minute ad. I'm like, wow. You take that and you apply that on the B2B side where it's like interesting and engaging. You can catch people at the right moment. It's just like, yeah, it'll still work because it creates those, human, it'll hit the human connections and you'll be like, oh yeah, I want to try this.
Yeah. And maybe, it's that weird thing, that balance of I want to be professional and can you trust my company with your growth stage enterprise money, right? Or are we some are we hacking? Are we growth hacking? It's almost like the
Yeah.
bigger you get, the more serious you have to be. I mean, I was chatting with, I don't know if you know, Travis Tyler, Panda Doc. He dressed as a
Yeah.
panda on a podcast, because why not, right? If that's your
Yeah.
logo, why not dress as a panda? I would, but then there's this thing of like, oh, does that mean it's too fun to
Right.
be enterprise? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to have the social proof behind your business. You still have to have been around, a little while.
Yeah.
If you're on like G2 Crowd, Capterra, all those, business to business sites that people are looking and reviewing, you have to have some background behind it so that you can have fun as well. So I think it's a good balance.
Right. And I guess it depends on the culture of the company. I mean, if your core values happen to have fun in them,
Yeah.
well then you must.
Yeah.
But if
And
it's be boring,
absolutely. Then you also look at the price point, right? So, I mean, if you're going, enterprise, selling a product there where people are going to be paying you 100, 150K, a year, you can have fun, but you still have to have that background. While like Keto Chow, I mean, $20, I'll buy a box of some stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's a much lower barrier to cross.
right.
So there's those other, factors to play into.
I mean, I guess if it was like, here, get this surgery that will permanently fix your
Mm,
body,
right.
and the doctor's dancing around, you're like, oh, I got too much Novocaine. You'd be like,
You have to know your audience too, right?
right,
So
right,
if you're selling to SaaS startups, you can have fun because that's built into a lot of the culture, and they do
right.
have the funding behind them that they can do enterprise deals and everything and be totally fine. But yeah, it's just understanding your audience on there.
Yeah.
If
It's probably stage related too, right? Like
Yeah,
early stage,
right,
attract people in with that other stuff. And then, maybe you button up that collar as they're starting to, look at that DocuSign.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'd love to take us back to, by the way,
yeah,
thanks for going down that path with me.
yeah, no
I'd love to
worries,
take us back to when you mentioned, getting at a company. I don't remember which one it was where you were at 400 and you went to 500, right? Just
right,
an extra million,
yep,
100 million, no
yep,
big deal, NBD.
yeah.
Talk to me about early on when you first got there, and then how you assess it. Growth
Oof.
marketing, what you're looking at this thing, you're like, okay, we're at 400 and you want to take it to that next place. What were some of your first thoughts?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting experience. I'd say that the organization, so it was in the auto industry, right? And so
Okay.
within this organization, they had 26 plus subsidiaries underneath it. It's a very private organization. There was no outside funding. It was basically a self-made business from
Wow.
two very amazing people that I'm not going to say their name because they're very private people, but like
Got it.
the CEO and everything's phenomenal. Most charismatic individual I've ever met in my life. And so it was an on-premise job in San Antonio, Texas. So they had, I think it was something like 15 different auto dealerships underneath them. They had the construction companies under there. They had everything that's needed to make sure that that was
Wow.
working. And so they didn't really have a good online presence, and that's very typical of the auto industry, especially when I did this, which was I don't know 8+ years ago or so. Whenever I joined them, they outsourced everything, traditional media. They were probably the largest spend in the local geo through, radio, ads, all that stuff. But online, they really didn't have good digital body language or digital presence. And then they also, didn't really have the team there. So what they did when they brought me on is they basically said, we want to build everything internally. So you have all the resources, which was great, to build the team internally, whatever you need. And we're here to just support you and, basically knock roadblocks out of your way. I'm like, okay, awesome. This is great. I actually joined as
Sweet.
director of digital marketing when I started. Within a very short period of time, I got bumped up, the chief marketing officer. I had one person who was working with me at the time who just was a generalist marketer. And then we had all these
Sure.
outsourced companies and agencies that we were doing. So we had to basically contract everything down, bring it inside. I became a recruiter plus building the strategy. So I was interviewing people all the time. Within 6 months, I had 6 different departments that I built out with director level people and 25 team members in total to really help implement what we needed to do. The bigger thing behind that was, and the reason that I dedicated the time I did to it is because with this organization, they're still very legacy, right? So they believed in a term, this is within the auto industry, that's called you work bell to bell. So that's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, except Sunday. Sunday I slept, but I was back in the office 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Doing the literal grind in the office. But what they wanted to do was move away from kind of like the sleazy car guy, mentality that, oh, you're going in there,
100%.
they're going to hard sell me. It's horrible. I don't want to do this. To we're basically a pillar of society. We're a customer centric brand, and build that into their narrative and their story. So we did a full, rebrand, relogo. I mean, redid the logo, but it was more about creating like a human engine, and we changed a lot of the terms, all that stuff. There's a really long story here that I could go on for hours and hours, but the way that we got to 100 million was really on the first day. The CEO sat me down and said, he says, Bubba, he's like, Bubba, I need a 25% increase. That's your goal. Hit the 25% increase. Let me know what we need to do, and that's it. So they were a company that had margins already built in. They've been around a long time, so they understood the foundations of, we can pour some money into this up to a certain extent to grow without, making a huge profit on that side. As
Right.
opposed to, some of the earlier startups get a ton of VC money, like grow at any cost, and then we hit what we've hit recently, and all the tech layoffs happen because foundational, margins aren't built into there. This company was not like that. They were already at 400 million. They knew their cost of goods. They knew everything inside and out. They just didn't know how to do it online, and they wanted to change that perspective. So we
Like
had
customer acquisition and those kind of things too. That CAC, they understood how much they typically pay. No,
Well, so
no.
they had it generally. They generally understood that from the sales side once they actually came in the door, but they didn't have any kind of like attribution built. They're very
Gotcha.
legacy built business.
Very.
The details that they had were, they pushed out an ad on the radio and just blasted it out all the time. And so they get this many impressions and they'll get this many calls, kind of. So they think it's going to cost about this much.
Right.
So one of the things I did is built a digital, like a data department. And so with that, we built out our attribution model. And that was one of the ways that we were able to show how we hit this, 100 million increase from marketing's efforts. So this much was brought in through marketing attributable revenue. This much was already like coming in through the pipeline. This much came in through these different channels. That was some of the first stuff that we did, was just dive into the data. Because we had larger budgets, we partnered with Nielsen. Nielsen was able to kind of jump into all of our data of our customers, and we mapped out. Basically, they use, I don't think they call it this anymore, but it used to be called the Prism model. I think it's called like the Claritas model now. But that had, basically all the data into personas within like 75 different sectors, and you kind of merge those together to better understand them. And so that allowed us, to better understand the segments of, oh, we've been marketing at these people while they're not really our best performing, customers. We should probably shift over there. Now that's a whole nother road about personas and if they're valuable or not. With this specific example, it was because we realized we've been sending a lot of, flyers out and everything to this group when they're not really our ideal customer. We need to shift over here and going after this ideal customer that we realize pays us, the kind of subsector group. They want to be that group, and our message still resonated with them. So it's kind of like the ideal group. So that helped us get there. We mapped everything out, and then we started actually trying out a bunch of different, traction channels because we could, and we built the team. But that took some time.
Tell me about typically you come in and you see something like a billboard or you see something like radio ads.
Right.
It's not even dark web, it's dark life. Like you don't know. It's sort of, and you could do the models, but is it really helpful? Were you surprised by any of those non-digital items? Were any of those keepers after your process was done?
Well, yes. We did keep a lot of our radio ads spend. We also kept a lot of our television ads. The thing with like local geos, since we're not going, throughout the entire United States, right? And we're definitely not global. It's very local. So a lot of, people in the local geo are not surfing the internet as much as we think they are from the tech side, right? We're in marketing, we're in B2B, SaaS and tech. We think everybody's online all the time. They really weren't, especially at that time. This was kind of pre-COVID, people watch TV a lot and they have the local cable. They're not streaming, everything, especially at this time. So the ads that went consistently, it just helped build our brand with them, on a continuous basis. So they might not have bought a car from us at that time, but they know our name in that space. It's like, oh, in San Antonio, World Car. That's the company. In New
Yeah.
Braunfels area, who we are. That's the company, because basically it was a pray and spray method that helped keep us top of mind whenever they were ready. And so much traffic. I mean, everybody already knows this, but so much commuter traffic in major, metros. San Antonio, 2 million plus people. So you're on the radio all the time in traffic and you hear our ad all the time. So that did keep us in front of them and then drove them, that and ads drove them to conversion.
Oh, amazing. I want to take you back to one of the things that you were tasked with. And I guess the question is, were you tasked with this, or was this your idea to take everything internal? You had one person on your team,
Right.
and you eventually built out 6 different departments.
Yeah.
Was that your call? Was that part of the charter to get me that 25% increase? Where did that come from?
Yeah, that came from the CEO. He said, I want everything to be internal, because in his perspective, and I don't 100% agree with it because I'm biased. I have my own agency, but I've also seen the benefit from agencies, and the negative, the horror stories from agencies. He had agencies that he'd worked for that he didn't feel were really like giving the attention that was necessary. They weren't performing at the level that they needed to. And to be very transparent, some of the agencies that I talked to when I joined and started looking at their numbers, they couldn't give me the basic data that I needed. I'm like, okay, so you're running all these paid ads. What can you show me the full funnel? How you spent this much? I get that. You sent me the impressions. I get that. But how many signed up and came into the showroom? And then after getting in the showroom, how many actually purchased the car? Can you show me that data? And they didn't have that. I mean, that would have made my life so much easier, that I come in and they're running these ads and I could see the whole funnel. Boom, I'd be way ahead of the game, but had to map that all out from the get-go. And so that was, there were some issues there. So we let go of a few agencies, but at the same time, I don't know if they actually got all the access from our CEO and our team to allow them to do all that. So that's also one of the benefits of being internal. You have access to everything. They're not going to block me because they know I'm working for them. So that was some of the challenges.
I could totally see that being the case. And I do really, one of the things you mentioned when you're asking these somewhat simple or important questions, and if the vendors have a response, great. If they don't, that's been some of the fun things for me too. Is you come in and just like, I guess the metaphor is like a bull in a china shop. You just like smash all these pre-existing notions and biases, and this agency is great. What do they do? What do they actually do? I once had an SEO agency at a company I just started at. I'm just okay. Hey, I'm normally pretty skeptical of every SEO agency, for the record. But I was like, hey, send me some reports, show me, what you've been up to, the influence you've had. And they just bombed me with like 30 Google Analytics reports, like straight out of GA, save as PDF here. And they just, it was clear. It was like, here's noise, right? Which might have worked on their the predecessor or a non-marketer who didn't know any better. Like, oh, this looks busy. This looks, and I was like, wait, you're showing me. So anyways, we got rid of them. But so you came in, you cleaned up. Do you thinking big picture now, do you see that as potentially a growth marketing trend? You get a certain size, you can afford to bring in those people, and you do, or not necessarily?
So I think this role was a little bit different, right? So it wasn't true growth marketing when I joined. It was more of, foundation building. I'm building an entire internal agency. I'm bringing on the people to handle, content marketing, paid marketing, our events, everything around there. So that was a little bit, I'd say that's definitely beyond the scope of a growth marketer. With a growth marketer, what you want is somebody who isn't tied and managing a huge team, usually. So they come in and maybe they have like a smaller team that they work with, but it's all about being, agile. It's all about trying, new things to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. The goal is to have somebody come in and say, okay, we haven't run an A/B test around, or run tests around this specific traction channel. Let's go ahead and build out a model that says we're going to run this test. This is what the cost is going to be. This is the feasibility of getting it done. Do we need dev work behind it? Do we have this? Like, scope out what that test is going to look like and everything around there. And then they go and run a small test. So I'm not saying like something that's going to take them 6 months and is going to cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like, let's run a test that's going to cost 100, 150 bucks. We split it up in 10 bucks a day, for our paid ads. And then we run it and we move fast so that we can get some data from it. And then ideally they figure out, okay, this is a winner. Let's do it again, something similar. Let's try some, additional alterations, versions of this and do it again until they get to a point that they can have statistical significance to move forward and double down on that. And once you figure out that this traction channel actually works, that's not the growth marketer to continue doing that. Ideally, in my perspective, the growth team's goal is to find new revenue generating areas, prove that they actually work, test out ways that aren't going to work, and then document that so that you don't go down the wrong path and spend a lot of money. So find small wins, double down on them to prove that this will actually work, and then you can actually, like from a CMO standpoint, the CMO would come in or the VP would come in and say, okay, let's build out a team to really maintain and optimize this and move forward. And then the growth team moves over to something else and tries new traction channels. And that's where I think the growth marketer gets the most value. Is whenever you bring them in and understand they're testing. That's all they're doing. They're going in there and just testing new ways. And then they have to be very data driven to show that this actually works or this doesn't, so that the company can come in and put a lot more budget behind it to scale that. And then the growth marketing team moves on to something else and you build out a whole department there to really grow that traction channel so that it significantly impacts things. Typically, the growth marketer isn't an expert on any, they have background in a lot of channels, but they shouldn't be the one that's constantly handling your PPC. That's not their goal. So if you have them just handling your paid and then they're just supposed to be optimizing that, that's not really the best use case for them. And I've seen that happen. Like, oh, growth marketer, they know how to run paid ads. Cool. They can make a landing page. Cool. So let's just have them do that for the whole company. No, because that's a different job as somebody who just optimizes and does that. So that's my thought process of where I found growth marketing the most beneficial, is just testing in all the different, areas, finding those traction channels, building them to show this works, and then stepping away into something else.
Yeah. Man, so much of that appeals to me too. It kind of reminds me of the Marine Corps too. Like, send us in, get it done, figure it out, take the fort. And then when it's time to just hang out and sort of fortify, call in the Army. They'll take care of it.
Exactly.
It's like, and then we'll go off somewhere else and do our stuff. And also when you mentioned like, it's not really the place for optimizing, you remind me of, you ever take that Strength Finder test?
Yeah. Long time ago. I did.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
You should dig up your results sometime and we'll swap them. But one of the guys that I worked with, I was at EF and they actually paid for everyone on the team to take it and then go out to lunch on the company's dime to talk about everyone's results. Really cool experience. Yeah. But one of the guys on my team, we were peers, right? All sort of working internal agency for this company with multiple companies. And he got this thing called Maximizer. And I remember reading about that and it said like, don't bring this guy your worst campaign and get his help fixing it. Bring him your best campaign, right? Bring him the one that you can't possibly improve anymore.
Yeah.
And he'll just go crazy trying to make it better. And that's what he loves. And that's not what I love to do. Yeah. Right. So it's like, cool, awesome. I won't, but if you do bring him that wrong one, he gets frustrated by it. Like, why are you bringing me this garbage? And, so what a great point you've highlighted around, certain people and certain roles, testing optimization versus, finally, taking it to the next level. That's really cool stuff, man.
Yeah, and that's why you have an entire field, conversion rate optimization, right? These people that
Right.
love that, they go in there and they're looking for those incremental improvements to, make something better, but it has to have performed, They go in
Yeah.
there, they understand the data behind it, but it's like, oh, this is one of our better campaigns or this is working. How do we make it better to get those incremental improvements? You
Love
bring
that.
that person in there. The growth marketer can do that, but if you're a very bootstrap team, sure, have them do some of that. But if you're bootstrapped, you're probably wanting to get more revenue, as fast as possible, as opposed to getting, micro improvements, on a blog post that you wrote that has like a CTA. So
Right.
bring on that growth marketer to focus on these, build your revenue pipeline, and then you have another marketer, the CRO, come in here and optimize things. So you have them focus in different directions.
Man, powerful stuff. Dude, who are you is my next question. Just
Oh,
who are you? How do you know all these things? Can you take me back in time to like
hmm.
little Andrew days? Did you always know you're going to be, starting companies left and right, selling companies, investing, teaching people how to do marketing? What was it like?
Yeah. So little Andrew was actually born in Australia, in Brisbane, Australia. While
No way.
my parents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea, and instead of having me in Papua New Guinea, because I mean the medical, it was still kind of
Yeah.
rough there, so they flew me over to Australia, and so I was born in there, and then I spent the first couple years of my life in Papua New Guinea. And then as like a missionary kid, preacher kid, right? We traveled quite a bit. So we went down to the Mexico border, and my parents were over, in the mountains in Mexico, doing their field work.
Wow, man.
Eventually, established ourselves there in South Texas because my parents loved it after the field closed up, and just kind of grew up down there. Um, I'd say the big thing, the reason I bring that up, is when you ask, who am I? I'd say I'm a person that needs to find a way to make a positive social impact in what I'm doing. That's why I mentioned like with World Car, they were trying to change things and really get involved and be a pillar of society and be customer centric and move away from these, negative,
Yeah.
you know, perspectives that are in that industry. And I've tried to find that in everything that I'm doing. And that's also one of the reasons that, I founded, Eudaimonia Health. It's really to find, mind and body wellness for what I call the forgotten generation. And these are, our seniors that are in elder care, facilities. Um, but that's been my goal, is really finding how I can give back, impact the world, and from a business standpoint have my fundamentals there so that I can live, but also so that I can bring on great people to work with me and continue to make a bigger impact, because I can only do so much by myself. When you surround yourself with an amazing tribe of people that can 10x your impact and are also aligned with that vision, that's whenever that true magic happens. um, Being a marketer, that just happened out of necessity, I'd say. It wasn't really the path that I thought I was going to go down. My undergrad, I don't come from a wealthy family, missionary, preacher kids, right? I
Sure.
got accepted to Baylor University, and phenomenal school. It's expensive though, and
Oh,
like
man.
my parents couldn't, afford all that. So I started my own kind of like marketing company. Didn't know what marketing was. Built people's websites, at the time, using front page, throwback to
Front
front
page, man.
page.
Totally, dude.
Yeah, it's great. And so I started charging, customers for that, helped build marketing plans back in the day, which I look at those, I even think about those now. They're so bad. I'm sorry to those people I worked with, but they still paid me. And that helped me kind of pay for my undergrad and get
Oh, that's
through
amazing.
it without owing, $1 million, which I mean, school costs now is crazy, but
It's
without owing,
crazy.
a ton of money. And so that kind of got me into that. And I'm like, oh, people will pay me for this. I should probably learn this and know what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, so that I can actually deliver on this service. And people would ask me to do stuff, and sure, yeah, I can do it. And I just go research all night, figure it out, and then make it happen. That way, they become repeatable customer for me.
Cool.
Yeah, the way it kept going this way is one of my clients ended up offering me a company called ConsultWebs, largest legal marketing firm in the U.S. Been around since 1997. They handle like
Dude.
everything. Huge props. Founded by, I believe he was in the Marine Corps as well, by a vet. Uh,
So clearly a great guy.
Great guy, great guy. Uh, Phenomenal company, great culture. But they, since they were a client from an SEO standpoint, they offered me a full time job, and I was
Oh,
married, and I'm like, I need health insurance. That's a thing here in the U.S. So I took that position, and that kind of just launched me, down that road. I worked with that company, 5+ years, handled bunch of different roles, built out teams for them, became the director of consulting services, launched a creative team with them, moved over to director of marketing
wow.
for a little bit, and then moved into the SaaS space after that because I was done with attorneys. Attorneys are great and everything, but I was
Yeah,
done. So
shout
that's,
out to
yeah.
attorneys.
Shout out to
Yeah.
criminal law and personal injury attorneys. Some of them are wonderful people, but I was like, let's go somewhere else, and so that's what I did the shift. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's tough, man. Legal. There's
yeah,
definitely a battleground,
for
uh,
sure.
marketing and in the job. But man, so out of necessity, then at some point you go back and you get a master's in psych.
Yeah, yeah, but behavioral economics. I went that route.
Wow.
I think it was. I mean, it was a good over 10 years since my undergrad. I'd always talked about going back and getting a degree. I wanted my master's, and I saw this program, behavioral economics, and I'm like, that's kind of what I'm doing. It's merging. The psychological factors of decision making and why consumers are out there purchasing with numbers, the economic aspect of that, and kind of merging that together. And that really, it was something I was already interested in, and that really helped me kind of build out the academic background of it and
Yeah.
learn about all these people that I'm like, I didn't even know they were out there. This is amazing. I mean, Dan Ariely with Predictably Irrational, a huge book. Daniel
Shout out to
Kahneman,
Dan.
Thinking Fast and Slow. I mean, all these like godfathers of the industry, and I'm just like, this is amazing material. I can't believe I didn't find this before. So it was a great degree. I mean, it took 3 years, to get through that program, but you know, loved it. Great stuff.
Yeah. And just like if you're having fun working or you're having fun learning, you're not really working, you're not
Right.
really in school. I mean, you're just having fun and learning in the
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. It was cool.
So now you've got two companies. Is it two? Or have I lost count? It's two.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
got
yeah. No, it's two.
Eudaimonia.
It's two right now. So Wordsmiths. I mean, talked about having an agency early on. It's not the same agency. It's kind of changed. Wordsmiths is now focused on kind of the way that I've grown most of the companies that I've joined. And it's using that content marketing aspect to build an inbound engine. And so that's what my
Okay.
team focuses on. And it's people that I've worked with in the SaaS space. They've kind of come with me throughout life. Like I talked about having that tribe. They've joined me and are working with me on this to deliver kind of like the same thing. You could say like a fractional content marketing team that comes in here, but also we bring the numbers, right? So we want to make sure that we're tracking things so that it hits your revenue goals. So Wordsmiths has been around probably like 3 years or so. And then recently I just launched Eudaimonia Health, and that was back in December. And yeah, bootstrapped as well, but something I'm learning, I've seen in other companies. I'm going through, the pre-seed,
Yeah.
fundraising call, and I'm talking to VCs all the time. So it's interesting to be on that side and actually going through all the conversations. So we're trying to scale that to really focus on the mental health side. The fitness side that we offer it's beautiful. It's like low hanging fruit to kind of go in there and help break down barriers and get these individuals that are in their rooms and isolated out and having fun. I mean, fitness cool, but it breaks down things because you're moving, and we use like Zumba music and Zumba Gold
That's
stuff
awesome.
while they're seated. And so I just watched a video of one of our sessions the other day, and it's almost brought tears to my eyes because they're all dancing and everything, and it's great. It's beautiful. But the other side that we're really going through, and we're jumping through the legal hoops for that, is to bring on mental health practitioners to really service them so that it brings in that not just the body but the mind
Yeah.
connection. And we already know in the US, mental health is, I mean, underrepresented. There are not enough practitioners
100%.
out there. And then if you take that slice and just look specifically inside these, assisted living facilities, that's even less represented. So this is an area that needs help. And so that's where we want to help. And that's why I'm trying to make this happen and build this, because it can truly change people's lives. And you can look at it and be like, hey, we helped this person. And that at the end
Yeah,
of the day, it's such a short lifespan, but you could say something like, you change one person's life or two people's lives. And that's great.
man, that's powerful. And it's Eudaimonia, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Eudaimonia?
yeah. We even have the pronunciation on our website, and we're putting it on our shirts. It's based off of kind of like Aristotle's philosophy of like eudaimonia, which is having a fulfilled life. The term literally translates as like flourishing, flourishing in life. But
Oh,
we're talking
nice.
about having that fulfillment, and it's not nirvana, and like joy all the time. We understand we go through ups and downs, but it's having that fulfillment, and that's why we think mind and body together can help bring some of that fulfillment to these people who brought
Dude,
us into the world. I mean, shit. So get a little
dude,
passionate.
powerful,
Sorry.
powerful. Real quick on the content side,
Mm,
who who are people listening, right?
right.
Probably looking for some help with content and a little inbound. Who are the right fit? Who's the ideal company to work with you on the
Yeah.
Wordsmith side?
Well, so our background is all in B2B SaaS. So we primarily work with, B2B SaaS companies.
Yeah,
For it to make sense, we usually like to work with a company that has at least 1 million or 2 million in, ARR, or you've recently been funded about that. And I say recently because I understand how burn rates work and how fast money can go out the door. So I want to make sure that, this just came in so that we can help you and you can see the results within a good time period, 6 months or so, when you really start seeing that traction happen.
right. Content takes time. It's an
It does.
investment. So you don't call you the last month of your runway.
Don't.
Reach out now so that you
Yeah.
don't need to worry about your runway.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And even
yeah,
if you're doing really well, jumping in there and saying, okay, we need this to generate this much revenue within a month, we're gonna say no. It's just we
yeah.
want to make sure that we're aligned and that things are working out. And we've been lucky enough to really have almost no churn whatsoever with any of the customers that we worked with. And they've been
Jeez.
around for years. So
Yeah.
that's what we want to
Wow.
do. We want to grow with you.
Dude, powerful. I know I keep saying powerful. I'm like, I stopped saying that, but all the things you keep saying, I'm just, man. So I have one final question for
Yeah.
you. And it's a bit of a hypothetical
Oh
question
man.
because you
Okay.
see, I may or may not have a time machine in New Hampshire, right?
Okay.
It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. So you come visit, we get some beer, some lobster, and we go check out the
Oh,
time machine.
nice.
Like, honey, I'll be back. We'll be back in a little bit. And then we're
Sure.
like, we're back, because it's time machine. Right. So, but we go back in time. It's a particular kind of time machine where you get to visit yourself. You get to
Mm.
meet yourself 4 or 5 days
Oh
after that
man.
undergrad degree, that poli-sci degree,
Yeah.
bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, Baylor University, right? You get to meet that Andrew. What kind of things would you tell yourself? You can sit down and have a little convo. What would you say?
Ah. So my younger self was I, very high stress, I'd say, very achievement driven. And I'm still very achievement driven, but I've learned how to manage my stress, I'd say, s- as best as any of us can. And so I think
Sure.
the first thing that I'd say to him is just, you got to just go with the flow. You got to roll with the punches. A lot is not going to work out, and that's okay because a few things will. And that's all you need. uh, don't obsess over things that are not working out. Just take it as a learning, opportunity and kind of move on. And that's where I've hit a lot of, I think high stress factors when I was younger is I just, and we all do this, right? We just ruminate. We sit there and we're like, oh, what if I did this? What if I did that? And that has never been healthy. That has never brought me to a point that I'm like, I feel good about this. It's whenever I just reframe what just happened and said, okay, so that didn't work out. I thought that was the end all be all, but it's not. Life's still moving on,
Mhm.
and there's other opportunities out there. Just go make it happen. And that's one of the things that I've always liked is I just go out there and, hustle. I've done so many different jobs out there just to make it work. Uh, Door-to-door salesman. I sold newspapers. I've done
Wow.
pizza delivery. After my undergrad, it wasn't streamless to consult webs and working with them. It's so many different things, and a lot of that doesn't work out, but it helps you get to the next stage. And so just be in it. Don't always just see the future. Be in it now. Under Embrace the suck. I think as they say in the Marine Corps, and then keep going.
Man. Embrace the suck, but be in it now,
Yeah.
right? Where are you at now? Cool. Do that. Oh
Yeah.
man, I love that. Knowing that it's building you and eventually you get to that next place, whatever that is.
Right.
So good. Where can people reach out? They want to connect social, they want to connect wordsmiths, Eudaimonia.
Yeah.
What are some good places to go?
So I'm on Twitter at A Miller blog. I'm on LinkedIn. I probably use that the most, and so that's Andrew Monnier or Andrew Miller. You can also email me anytime. My email for Wordsmiths is the easiest one. Is like Andrew@wordsmithsinc.com or Eudaimonia. If you could spell it, it's just amiller@eudaimoniahealth.co.
Beautiful, beautiful. Man, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you.
Man, we've talked about so many things from keto chow to traction channels and growth marketing and growth hacking and all these things. I learned a bunch myself, so I really appreciate you.
No, thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Heck yeah. For those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this episode with someone else. 1 person, 3 people, 9,000 people. Knock yourself out. But put your take on it. Put your perspective, what you got from it, what you agree with, what you disagree with. Tag us. We'll both hop in there and comment and make a whole fun time of it. And that's thought leadership, right? Just getting good information out there to other people. With that, Andrew, thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Casey. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. This has been another crazy episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.